All right, guys, so my name is Jared Claxton. I'm one of the flight paramedics for Cox AirCare. Today, what we're going to talk about is just a real simple overview of our flight program and just kind of an idea of what we do, what we can't do, our limitations, kind of the special things we can do when we're out on flights, and then what you guys need to do if you're on a scene somewhere and you have to set up the LZ for us. It doesn't happen very often. 99% of the time, a local fire department is there doing it for you, but on very few occasions, the EMT or the medic will have to get out, actually communicate with us via radio to set up that LZ. So we're just going to give you a quick overview and kind of what that entails. So we've got two bases, both are MD-902s, one here in Springfield, CoxHealth. You've probably seen our aircraft sitting down there, just on the above the old ER, above the ambulance bay down there. So that's AirCare 1, that's where we're based out of. The other one is up in Bolivar. We just took that over in 2017, right there at CMH, right out front. So we've got the two there. Our main coverage area is about 30 to 35 nautical miles from those locations. So that's what we consider a local flight, okay? So we've got, Bolivar will go all the way up to Warsaw. We've gone up to Clinton before. Springfield will go all the way down to Branson, sometimes Arkansas. Very rarely do we go over towards Joplin or even down to this far southwest corner down near Anderson. We rarely ever go down that way, but we do. So what do we do? What is our mission? What is our over-encompassing process that we do? Well, obviously it's quick assessment, quick access, quick diagnosis, and quick treatment, okay? We do a few more things in flight that you guys can't do on the ground. One of those being blood products. We carry bloods. We carry 2 units of O-negative blood and a unit of A-pos plasma. So it's never frozen plasma. We can hook it up and put it in right away. The nice thing about that is we can start those mass transfusion protocols that they do in the emergency room 30 to 40 minutes, an hour before they even get to the ER. So if it's a major class 1 trauma, major hemorrhaging, GI bleed, something where they're losing fluid volume, normal saline, lactated ringers ain't gonna cut it. So that's why we got the blood products, so we can do quick early access. So this is how we kind of break it down to figure out, hey, is this patient appropriate for flight? So I'm assuming most of you guys, are we all EMTs, any medics? All EMTs, okay. So the decision might not necessarily fall on you, but you can assist in making this decision. So this is the same triage, start triage that you guys know and learn in EMT school and medic school, what you guys use on the ground now. And this kind of helps us decide, yeah, should this person fly? Should it not? It kind of varies depending on where you're at location-wise and the severity of the patient. We like to fly these people who are reds. Those are kind of our bread and butter. They're the ones that need immediate access, immediate transport. They need to be in the ER quicker than just driving them somewhere, okay? So those are the people who are, you know, breathing 30 minutes, you know, more than 30 minutes, you know, a minute, or they don't have an airway, or you can't get an airway. They need to be intubated. They need to be criked or trached or something. They can't or they can't control the bleeding. You don't know where it's coming from, or you've tried tourniquets, you've tried compression bandages, you've tried quick clots, stuff's not working. Call us. Hey, guess what? We've got blood. We can put more in the tank. So that's kind of the process you're going to use. Hopefully your partner will use that as well whenever you see that. So on scene, what we want to see you guys do for us is, what are you seeing? This is what we want you to communicate to us. If this is an MVA or a scene flight, it's at someone's house, farm accident, whatever, tell us what you saw when you got there, i.e. was this a tractor? Was it a car? How much damage is there? We don't necessarily get to see what happened or where it happened. 90% of the time it feels like you guys are bringing the patient to us at a secure LZ, whether it's at a fire station, another ambulance station, something like that. So we very rarely get to actually see the method or the MOI, okay? That's something we just don't get to see very often. And then tell us what you don't see, okay? Is there something that doesn't seem right? Does this patient have some severe injuries that's not adding up to what's happened here? Could have been injured somewhere else and transported by somebody else. How many people are there? Granted, we only fly one patient at a time, but if you tell us, hey, this was an MVA, there was 3 or 4 people in the vehicle, this was the worst one out of it, that kind of gives us an idea of how severe the accident was, where the patient was at. Maybe this might not be the patient that needs to be flown. Maybe it needs to be somebody else. Maybe something was missed. So communicating that information to us will make our job a lot easier. Other big thing is it protected and secure. We land on highways, we land on the roadways a lot, especially like 44, 65, 13, things like that. We need those places secured and protected for us. We can't put a $6 million aircraft in the middle of a highway and then expect to say, oh yeah, just let Jimmy and his semi go driving through and hit the aircraft. That's a bad day for all of us. Then what resources are you going to need on scene? If you think this patient is a great candidate for blood products, tell us. We'll bring him out with us. If you think this patient needs advanced airway, if they think that they need to be needle decompressed, if they need a chest tube, let us know. We'll bring that with us. We can do that stuff in the field. So make sure you let us know. Static scene versus dynamic scene, that's just kind of a conjecture there. Static scene is just saying that, hey, we're at a position now that everything is chilled out. We know what's going on. Everything's under control. We have a process now. Dynamic scene is, ooh, things are constantly changing. There may be weather inbound. There may be more traffic inbound. Things like that. So knowing the difference between static and dynamic is not necessarily for you guys, more so for us. Okay. So how we figure this out is we have our incident commander and officer in charge. Those are the people we communicate with first. Okay. If we are going to an LZ, we'll communicate with our LZ command. Okay, usually fire department, we call them on fire mutual aid, say, hey, we're inbound, this is how far we are. What's our LZ look like? Is it secure? Is it safe for us? Are there hazards around? Should we be worried or questioning anything? Okay, not a big deal. Then we'll communicate with you guys. If that doesn't happen, which you guys could be busy, totally fine, then we'll try to communicate with fire and see if they can say, hey, what's EMS working on? Can you give us a picture? That'd be great. Every once in a while, we'll show up on an LZ or a scene where we have to do extrication. We do not extricate patients. That is not our job. Our job is primarily patient care. So we can crawl into the vehicle and start patient care while they're doing all the stuff around us. We have very limited protection. We've got our flight suits, which are Nomex. That's it. Sometimes we'll have eye protection, eye pro on, but that's really about the extent of it when it comes to our protection. For roadways, we always try to wear our reflective vests. We carry them in the aircraft. We also carry high-vis jackets during the winter time just to kind of help us there. So safety is always our priority. We even have this saying that it's 4 to go, 1 to say no. Every crew member has a 51% pull on flights. So if you even get this gut feeling, this moment where like, something doesn't feel right, that one crew member can say, no, something's not right, something doesn't feel good, my gut's telling me we shouldn't go, we can cancel the flight. We can turn around, we don't even have to launch. So it's a safety culture that we want to be. We don't want to be like other agencies that have kind of pushed their crews to go out and fly in bad weather when they're not feeling good, when they're exhausted, when they're tired. That's not a good thing. Accidents happen. We don't want accidents. As you can see, aircraft accidents are a huge prevalence, especially in the medical industry, which is kind of scary and kind of sad. In the 3.5 years I've been flying, there's probably been at least 8 to 10 aircraft crashes, which resulted in multiple fatalities. Either one or all of the entire crew was killed. There's not a lot to these aircrafts. I mean, it is a metal frame with engines above your head and a giant fuel tank underneath your butt. So you're pretty much flying a giant bomb with the weight above your head. So it's very scary and very dangerous if we don't do it right, if we don't have that safety culture mind. So we don't want to be these guys. We don't want to show up and then something bad happens. So that's what we want to eliminate. We don't want to be in the news. Not for this anyway. So our aircraft, what we fly are MD-902s. This is what you're going to see, our big blue blueberries in the sky. Okay, we're very, very fortunate to have this airframe. We're also very lucky because we're the maybe one of 3 in the entire U.S. that flies this aircraft. Okay, it's a fantastic aircraft. The things that kind of make it unique is it has no tail rotor. If you guys didn't notice that, it has what's called the NOTAR system, so it's a lot quieter. You're going to say like, it's a helicopter, it's not quiet. But when you're around other ones with tail rotors, you'll see the difference. It's safer because there's no spinning blades back there. So tall guys like me or tall guys like him, we can walk back there. The worst thing that's going to happen to us is the air coming out of that tail is going to blow your feet out from underneath you. That's it. It's still very strong. It can sweep your feet out from underneath it, but it's a lot safer. So how the no-tar system works is between the two engines up top, there's a third fan, sucks air in. The tail boom is a hollow pipe. And then the cone back here rotates left and right. That is how we turn left and right, and that's also our counter torque to counteract the actual rotor disc itself. So that's just one moving part that we have to worry about. It's just that tail cone swinging back and forth. So no blades, no splitting headaches, a lot safer. Our fuel capacity, 158 gallons. That doesn't seem like a lot, but that gives us about 2 hours and 10-ish minutes of flight time. Now, we don't really rate our ability to fly on distance. We rate our ability to fly on time, because we can't always fly the same distance. Weather plays into a factor, wind plays into a factor. So that is kind of our window. As long as we have at least 2 hours of fuel, which we always fill it up after every flight, we can go to St. Louis and about halfway back on a full tank of gas. So that's a pretty good limit. Our stretcher weight is 500 pounds. So the aircraft itself really doesn't have much of a weight capacity, which is awesome, but at the same time kind of scary. It kind of makes my back hurt a little bit. Our stretcher, which is kind of a sled, looks like a backboard with a lot of padding and seatbelts on it. That part can really put anybody on there. If they fit, they fly. Our limitation is that pedestal that stretcher slides onto. It's 500 pounds. Now, are we limited at 500 pounds? Not necessarily. We have flown someone up to 680 pounds before. So it can take a bigger patient. Our biggest concern is just girth at that point. We have an equipment wall where our monitor and vent and stuff is mounted above the stretcher. If their stomach hits that or their gut hits that, then they're not going to fit. So they have to be able to fit in order to fly for us. So how does communications from you to dispatch to us occur? So we're talking to a lot of people on a lot of different radio channels. So when you guys make a request, you're going to contact our dispatch. You're going to tell them, hey, this is what we got. This is what we need. Go ahead and bring them either to the scene or to the next closest LZ. And if you don't know where the LZ is at, dispatch will look it up. They've got the maps. They've got lists of all of our landing zones. They will tell you, hey, you're here. You need to go to this location here. This is your next closest LZ. This is where you need to go. If that's not going to work, it's too far away, i.e. the patient is critical, you can't do a lot of moving with them, you're afraid it's going to worsen things if we do a lot of moving, you can bring us to the actual scene if there's place enough for us to land, whether it be a field, a driveway, the roadway out front. If we can fit, we'll find a way. Dispatch will get us the coordinates and everything. You just tell them where you're at. They can look up on a map to see where you guys are parked at, and then they can give us a coordinates that'll get us in that general area, and then we'll communicate with you guys. So, and whenever we get launched, we get paged out just like you guys. Tones go off, they tell us, hey, AirCare 1, AirCare 2, whatever, flight request, this location. Okay, our pilot gets that information, and then they have to input this on a risk assessment. On the risk assessment, it goes to another dispatch center in Colorado, which is Air Methods. That's the people who we vendor through. That's where our pilots, that's where our mechanics come through. They have to put in all the information we just got. It gets sent electronically to the Air Methods dispatch. They review that information. They also are looking at weather locally in our area. They've got a full nationwide map, all the weather in the area. They can pull up each individual bases nationwide, and they can look at that weather. They can say yes or no just as well as we can say yes or no. So they were the fourth person I was talking about earlier on that 4 to go, 1 to say no. So even if all 3 crew members here in Springfield say, yeah, we can take it, no big deal, that guy or gal in Colorado can say, nope, I see weather popping up over here on the state line. It's going to move your direction. You're not going to make it. Okay? So they can say no. They can shut us down. If they approve, our pilot approves, and crew approves, we will launch. Okay? Usually we can get off the ground from the time tones are out, usually about 5 to 6 minutes. And that entails us getting upstairs, getting equipment loaded and secure, doing walk-arounds, making sure the aircraft is safe, things are latched down, everything's closed, fuel caps are on, and that we're safe and ready to rock. We'll crank, we'll launch. Once we get in the air, we're talking to dispatch saying, hey, we're going, get us information. This is when we're getting the patient info of what they've obtained and coordinates, okay? While usually the medic or the nurse is obtaining that information, our pilot is talking on Springfield Tower, getting air clearance from them, and then also communicating air to air to other aircraft. So we can be switching back and forth between 4 and 5 different radio stations and frequencies within the first few minutes of our flight. So if we're not communicating with you right off the bat, it's because we're either talking to tower or we're talking air to other aircraft. So give us a minute. We got a lot going on. Once we start getting closer to you, we usually call, say, usually 5 to 6 minutes out. We'll contact the fire department, whoever the LZ person, the coordinator or the commander is, and get the brief from them. And then we'll switch over to our primary, which is what Cox will operate on, AirCare Primary. That's where we'll talk to you guys on, and that's where we'll get a report from you or an update. If something's changed, the patient's either stabilized or, hey, they're circling the drain, bring your airway kit, we need RSI. Or, hey, we've tried needling them 2 or 3 times, it's not working, can you bring equipment for a chest tube? Things like that. Letting us know, hey, there's other things that need to happen before we can launch or get you guys off the ground again. So be prepared for that. We're also tracked just like ground. We've got GPS tracking in the air. Dispatch watches us wherever we're at. So whenever they're seeing you guys on the ground, there's another program they're watching and they're seeing us fly everywhere. You guys can watch us too. There's even apps on your phone that you can see and watch us fly around nationwide. You can see every aircraft in the world at any given time, which is pretty awesome. If for some reason our outer link or our tracking goes out, we have to give position reports every 15 minutes, which is kind of a pain in the butt, because that means every other channel gets kind of muted out for a minute. Our pilot communicates with dispatch and tells them our GPS coordinates. So our dispatcher is literally finding that GPS, marking it on a map, and drawing a line to see what our path is. So in the worst case scenario, we have an issue, we go down, we have an in-flight emergency, we have to take an emergency landing, they can find us. Because sometimes we have to land in places where we don't have radio frequencies or radio reception or cell phone reception. So that is kind of why they have to keep a track on us. If you guys go up to dispatch and you walk up to that door and they got the little light on outside, it means there's an aircraft in the air. Nobody comes in or out of that dispatch center while that light's on. It's a safety thing for them. It's so they stay focused on us, because we can go down or we can have in-flight emergencies anywhere in our area. So it's just a safety thing for them, it's a safety thing for us, and we really appreciate the fact that they put that much focus on it. So safe landing zone is essential for us, whether it's a hayfield, whether it's a highway, someone's backyard. Clear communication is a part of that, is a vital part of that LZ. So in a rare instance, like I said before, if you guys have to go and set up the landing zone, partners in the back doing patient care, fire's not on scene, it's your job to walk out and say, hey, what would be the best place to go? What is roughly 100 foot by 100 foot square? That's kind of our minimum that we want to shoot for. Granted, we can land a little bit smaller one, it's like 50 to 75 by 50 to 75, somewhere in that. But 100 to 100 is kind of what we're shooting for. What you physically have to do, if it's a field or something like that, you need to walk out there and get eyes on the ground, looking to see if there are fence posts, if the grass is high, if there's rock piles, if there are power lines running through, things like that. Prime example, I took a flight last summer up to Fair Grove, not very far away. Fire department did a fantastic job setting up our LZ. Nice big field, nice about knee-high grass, not too bad. They even set up tripod lights to light up the area for us. On our approach from the side that they told us to come in, when we were about 30 feet from the ground, I just happened to look down out the side of my window and saw a set of power lines running across the field. Both fire missed it and we missed it because it was nighttime. We can't really see those until we're right on top of them. I called an abort, our pilot lifted back up, we took another lap around to take a look around and came back from the other side. If I hadn't looked down at the right time, we would have went into power lines. It's a bad day. It's a really bad day. We don't like power lines. Power lines are bad. So being able to tell us where those are at, whether they're on the east side, west side, if they're on the south running east to west, communicating that to us. So if you don't know your directions, which way is north, south, east, and west, guess. Give us the best thing that you can do. If you don't know and you know there's a road or a highway nearby, if it is an odd number, it runs north to south. If it's an even number, it's running east to west. So if you're running near Highway 13, that is a north to south, right? So you know that road's going north to south. But hey, there's a row of trees or there's a power line cutting across the highway. You can tell us, say, hey, there's power lines on the south side of the road running east to west because you know the road is running north to south. So it kind of gives you an idea to help you figure out your directions, especially if you don't know where you're at, okay? Frequencies, what we prefer as fire mutual aid, we can talk to anybody. We can talk to you guys if we have to. That's what we go to for primary fire communications. What we communicate on statewide is MOSWIN. It's a all digital frequency. Doesn't matter where we're at in the state of Missouri, we can communicate with our dispatch. So it's a trunk frequency that transmits statewide. Highway Patrol uses it, MoDOT uses it. Anything that's a statewide agency uses that kind of frequency so they can communicate. It's fantastic, it's awesome. Like I said, we were going to talk to the command or LZ coordinator, and what we don't like is most of those incidents happen during takeoff and landing. Like I said about those power lines. That was during landing because we're focusing on looking at the spot we're wanting to land instead of really the area around it. So that's when we get focused and we get that tunnel vision. So that's when it's the scariest, is takeoff and landings. So the difference between pre-established or hasty LZs. Pre-established is this nice pretty LZ, nice concrete pad, lit up. Whether it's already been looked at by our pilots, it's been vetted, there's lights, there's a wind indicator, whether it's a flag, windsock, something to give us an idea. Those are pre-established. Those are the ones that are going to be in that book that dispatch can reference, or ones that we already have pre-programmed into our GPS. Makes it super easy, makes it really quick and easy because we don't have to worry about communicating with you guys if it's already pre-established. We can go ahead and land there because we already know it's safe, we know it's vetted, we have a wind indicator, we know the hazards, so we don't have to necessarily worry about it as much. When we go to an unknown or unfamiliar or a hasty LZ, i.e. a field, backfield, that's where we have to have communication before we will land. We cannot put skids down unless we talk to you guys or fire. So keep that in mind. If you show up, nobody's there, but you know this is the LZ, be switching over to our AirCare primary and communicating with us, because if not, we're just going to sit there and just fly circles around you until somebody talks to us. It's just a safety thing for us. It's not that we're trying to ignore you guys or that we're trying to delay getting on the ground. It's just a safety thing for us because we don't know what's on the ground, okay? So day flights, it's the easiest time to see obstacles. This is a very good prime example of an intersection. We land at intersections a lot. So looking at this, can anybody see any hazards? It's kind of a hard picture, but that's kind of what it's going to look like from about 1,500 feet up.
Are there power lines?
There are power lines. Where are they? Where do you see them?
It looks like
Right,
right side.
right here or right here? Well, what we got here, you've got the signals, the turn signals. You can see them sticking out. Okay. And then you've got a set of power lines running across the north side of the intersection. You can see the shadows on the ground, and you can see the pole right there and right there. So when we're above it, we can't see those lines at all. They are non-existent. They're completely invisible to us. We're looking for the poles itself. If we can't see the poles, we're hopefully looking for other indicators that there's power lines nearby, whether there's a house or buildings or something like that. We'll look to see if there are jumper lines going to those buildings to say, hey, there's a building right here. Let's follow those back out and see if we can find poles. Power lines blend in so well, even during the day. They're completely and utterly invisible at night. Trees obscure those poles. There's probably a power pole right here going to one of these buildings over here. We can't see that because of those trees. Now, do trees play a factor? Of course they do, but we can usually see those. They're nice, big, and bushy. We can get away from them. Not a big deal there. In the wintertime, when the leaves have fallen off, they're a little bit harder to figure out, okay, how big they are. The smaller branches, the smaller little twigs that stick off of it, they get harder and harder to see. So help us with that as we get closer. Here is a very, very popular site that we've gone to many times. I believe the story here is, this is down around the Ava area. We were requested for a flight, and the call came out either at the barn or at the house. I don't remember, I wasn't there. But initially the crew wanted to land, or the ground crew and the fire wanted the helicopter to land right here. Well, what do you see wrong with that? Yeah, power lines running right here. You've got a jumper cable coming off this way. You've got big old bushy trees right here. Our pilot did an orbit across around the area to kind of get an idea, a recon of the area, and said, I don't like that. Let's go ahead and move it to the north side of the house. Actually, I think they went over here because you can actually see where they drove out and around where the cars were at and drove out here. So I think we landed out here, away from the house, away from the trees, away from the power lines, and found a better place. Just because it looks good on the ground to you guys doesn't necessarily mean it looks good to us up in the air. So you'll see us come in, you'll see us do about an orbit and a half, sometimes 2 orbits, and that's getting us a good visual recon of the area so we can see what you're talking about and see if there's something that you guys don't see. Because sometimes we can see something you can't, and vice versa. So that's where that communication plays in. Night flights. Towers are scary. Most of them around here are well lit. If they have a light on them, they're usually 100 feet or higher. That's kind of a requirement. But we can't always see them because they blend in with other lights, city lights, street lights, even if they're the same color. I don't know if you guys have seen the towers out in Fordland, the big tall TV broadcast towers. Those things are 2,000 and 3,000 feet. Like they're huge, absolutely huge. We don't even fly above them. That's how tall they are. We have to fly out and around them. We never really go over them. If you ever get a chance to at nighttime and you're close and you're out that direction, watch them. They all have different light patterns, which is kind of cool. One of them will just blink and they'll alternate. The other one has a chasing light that goes up and down the length of the tower. So you can differentiate between the 5 different towers that are out there and know where they're at. So those are kind of a unique difference compared to the other towers in our area where it's just a single blinking light on the top of the tower. At night, we can see those, but under night vision goggles, which we wear at nighttime, they blend in because everything becomes green at that point. So night flights pose the additional hazards, again, of decreased visibility. Usually if that's at nighttime, it's the back half of our shift. We work 24-hour shifts. So if we've had a busy day, we've been going nonstop, we're gonna be tired. That's when the most accidents happen, is in the backside of that clock. We're tired. Prime example, my last shift. We did nothing all day long. We sat at the station and watched TV, okay? 8 o'clock rolls around, our night pilot rolls in, we don't come back to that station until 5 o'clock the next morning. We were going nonstop all night long with flights. We would get a flight, get to south, get fuel, go another one. Get to south, get fuel, go another one. Get to south, get fuel, go another one. I mean, it was just a constant, nonstop, revolving door flights that night. We were exhausted, so that's when those accidents become more prevalent because we're getting worn out. So keep that in mind if you guys are requesting for flights. Are you guys tired? If you're tired, we're probably tired. So try to communicate with us. Let us know the majority of the hazards to help us out the best you can. Identifying the LZ. So when you guys show up in your ambulance, your Sprinter, whatever you guys are driving, our biggest deal is headlights, okay? That's what we usually have most people use, at least 2 vehicles crisscrossing. Where that X hits, that's where you want us to land, okay? If you don't have a vehicle that can reach it out there, glow sticks, you can throw a flashlight on the ground, something with some weight to it. Don't throw out things that are light. Don't use road flares, especially if they're the ones you have to light off. Fire hazards, we can blow those things away. We can blow them into fields, we can blow them into houses. Not a good idea. Glow sticks are fine. We're looking at trying to find ways to make kits for crews, so that way they can throw out glow sticks or throw out weighted LED lights for us, so we can kind of designate where those LZs are at. Like I said, most of our fire departments are going to have that covered, but in a rare instance, it'll fall on you guys. So, and that's the case, use your headlights, okay? Always try to point your headlights into the wind, because we always land into the wind, not with it, just to help slow us down. That way we're not landing into your headlights, we're landing with your headlights, okay? If you can't do it, just light it up until we get close, and then you can turn your headlights off, okay? Not a big deal. If you have your emergency lights on, that's fine. It's not gonna bother us. You don't have to worry about clicking them on or off when we get there. But if you have them off and we can't find you, you can click them on. That'll help us find you quicker if we're having trouble locating you, okay? So night vision. This is kind of one of the cool parts of this job. All 3 crew members wear night vision goggles on every night flight. So they're binocular style, non-magnifying, so what you see is exactly what you see through the naked eye, except bright green. So this is an older area. This is before the tower, the Jared Neuroscience, and but this is before it was built, so that's what it looks like beforehand. This is what it looks like through goggles. Now, this is nice and bright because we have a lot of these lights in the background, really lighten it up. Night vision goggles takes the ambient light, amplifies it, usually by 10 and 20 fold. So even out in the middle of nowhere, we can see things that you guys can't see. So night vision goggles are required. At least 2 crew members have to have them on every night. So usually the third, the nurse, whoever's in the back might not have them, but whoever's in the front has to be wearing them. So we always wear our goggles. So like I said, this is kind of what we're looking for, 100 foot by 100 foot day and night. That's kind of our safety deal. That's kind of what we want to see it built up. If it's available, if you've got lights, if not, not a big deal. Like I said, use your headlights and put them into the wind. Not with the wind, but into the wind, because that's the direction we're going to be making our approach from, okay? When it comes to flat ground or not flat ground, we can't do anything more than 5 degrees. It doesn't seem like a lot, but when you put a helicopter up on a 5-degree slope, it's pretty scary. It's not necessarily to protect us from getting, hit by the blades. It's because the majority of the weight is up top where the engines are at. So it's a very top-heavy aircraft. If we're canted one direction or the other, and the pilot doesn't realize it, and he goes down to idle, there's enough weight up there that could pull the aircraft over. So we don't want that to happen. So the flatter, the better, obviously. Our pilots are really good at determining when they touch down. If they put the skids down and they feel cant one direction or the other, or forward or back, they can feel it. They've been doing it for many, many years. A lot of these guys are 15-year plus flying veterans. So thousands of hours of flight time. So whenever they touch down, they know, hey, this ground doesn't feel right. Let me turn, let me reposition to find a better angle. Because now we have to get out and operate underneath that rotor disc. We don't shut down on scenes, so those blades are going to continue to spin until we take off. So keep that in mind when you put us somewhere. The other big deal is, did we get a lot of rain or weather lately? Is the ground soft? Is it mushy? Is there a lot of grass? What's going on? What are these skids going to be laying down in? With you walking around with nice flat feet, not a big deal. You're not going to sink. Our skids are about 4 inches wide, and they're long pipes. So as soon as they touch down, I mean, you've got 3,000 or 4,000 pounds that's going to be put down on a 4-inch wide skid. That's going to sink. If we sink in dirt and mud, we don't feel it, we might not be able to lift off because of the suction from that mud. So keep that in mind too if it's a muddy or wet ground. So that can keep us on the ground. The other big deal is if we put one skid in mud and the other one's on semi-firm or semi-dry ground, they try to lift, that suction on the one side could lift us and tip us. So knowing how firm the ground is, did we get a lot of weather lately? Is the ground wet? Is it muddy? What's it feel like? Keep that in mind, let us know. Like I said before, our pilots are really good at feeling that through the aircraft. They can kind of determine that when they touch those skids down. If they can and they think it's not soft enough, we'll lift and move. It's not a big deal. Airborne hazards. There's a lot of wind coming down from the downdraft, from those blades. It's not just as simple like, oh, it's a breeze. No, it's going to be moving a lot of air. So if there are sheets, if there are paper products, plastic bags, whatever, that stuff is all airborne hazards. A plastic bag can put us out of service. Let me put it that way. If that bag gets blown up and catches one of those blades, that puts enough resistance on those blades that it could damage one of them. Okay? Those blades, per blade, is $250,000 per blade. They are made specifically for this job. They're carbon fiber, they're custom made, they are made to have that amount of stress on them outward, not when we're flying, not to have that extra stuff on there. So a little plastic bag can destroy that blade. That's how balanced they are. That's how they're made for that. They're not made for that kind of stuff. So look around, look for hazards. We don't want anything getting kicked up for us. Hazmat. We do not fly hazmat patients. So if you go to a big scene, something like this, a train wreck, semi-tanker, something that's been spilled, this patient has been exposed, they're covered in whatever it is, you don't know what it is. We're not going to fly them unless we know they've been deconned. Okay, decon has to happen first. We've got a phenomenal response when it comes to hazmat in our area. We've got Springfield Fire. They've got their own hazmat section. That is their primary focus, is hazmat, decon, and things like that. If you guys come down here to Christian County, Taney County, whatever, they've got a regional hazmat response. So each department has a section of the hazmat response. One might have the responders, one might have the decon, one might have the ones that go into the scene. So they won't all have the equipment, so you might have to wait a little bit longer for certain pieces to show up. So if you get a patient who needs to be flown and they've not been deconned, they have to be deconned before they can be in that aircraft. Case in point, if they are not, and it's a chemical that causes who knows, loss of consciousness, hallucinations, whatever. Do you really want that stuff near a pilot while we're flying at 2,000 feet in the air? No, we don't want that to happen. So make sure they're deconned. If we do need to land at a scene, they have been deconned, we will land uphill, upwind. Usually there is a designated area for aircraft, whether the fire department or an LZ coordinator or whoever that is going to be doing that on their own. That's their job. You won't have to worry about that. Your jobs will be strictly patient care and making sure they're deconned and then getting them from decon to us. You don't have to worry about setting up LZs in that case. This is a big incident. There's going to be lots of pieces moving all at the same time, so you don't have to really necessarily worry about that stuff. So, weather. I know there's a lot of questions about weather, what we can and can't do weather-wise. We have weather minimums that are not necessarily set by us, these are set by the FAA. We are what's called a VFR program, which means we can only fly under visual flight rules. We have to be able to see where we're going. In comparison, Mercy is allowed to do what's called IFR, instrument flight rules. Now, that does not mean that they can fly in all weather, every weather, no matter what it is, and fly basically just with instruments and GPS. It is a long, drawn-out process just to get approved for an IFR flight. So, and it has to be a designated area to land. You can't land at a scene, you can't land at an LZ. You have to go to an airport or a hospital with helipads in order to do an IFR flight. So, prime example, we went down to Branson one time. Lady had a dissected aorta. We had to fly them from Branson to St. Louis. There was weather between us and St. Louis. We couldn't fly. We tried to figure out a way if we could get ground there, if we could get fixed wing there and fly them there, or see if Mercy could do IFR. In order for them to file the flight plan, it was going to take them over an hour just to file the plan, launch, and then meet us at the airport in Branson before they could even fly from Branson to St. Louis. Once they got to St. Louis, they would have to land at another airport, get ground transport somehow mixed in with that, and drive them from the airport then to the hospital. So as you can see, it's a complicated process when it's IFR. So that's why we don't do it. It's very expensive, very long and drawn out. It's the cost / risk benefit, it's not there. It's just not there for us. So these are our minimums right here. Day local and day and night local is what we really focus on more so. 800-foot ceilings, that's where the level of the clouds are at the lowest. Okay, it might not be all of the clouds, but the level of the lowest clouds. That's what that number means. And then 2 miles visibility. That means we can see horizontally 2 miles in all directions. Okay. Now, if you work your way down, if it's cross country is beyond that local flight, so more than 35 nautical miles. So Kansas City, St. Louis, we have to have more minimums because we're dealing with different terrain as we go over those distances. Night, they have to go up. So our ceilings have to be higher and our visibility has to be better for us to be able to fly. Same thing with cross country. We have to have nice high ceilings and good visibilities, and that's with night vision goggles on. Okay. Flight acceptance, we talked about that already. Helicopter shopping, that is a scary process. That is where a program or another EMS agency will set and call around from agency to agency to find a helicopter in order to fly. If they keep calling, hopefully that someone will say, yeah, sure, we'll go, even if the weather is crappy. That leads to the majority of our accidents in the HEMS industry is flying in bad weather. They go somewhere, visibility goes down, they get disoriented. Spatial disorientation is a real thing. I've experienced it. It is horrifying to be in a helicopter and not know which way is up or down because you can't see a horizon, you can't see the ground, you can't see the sky. You're just in a bubble moving. We flew back from Little Rock one time and we got over where the Buffalo River is. There's no lights out there. It was a clouded night, so we had no stars in the sky. Even with the goggles on, I couldn't see the trees below us, and I couldn't find where the sky and the horizon and the ground were, so I couldn't find a horizon. We were flying into the wind, so we were flying slightly sideways. With me up front, with the sinus crab walking that we were doing as we were flying, it felt like the aircraft was flipping over. That's what my body felt like. So I started panicking, but even when I looked over at my pilot, and he's not panicking, I'm like, okay, he's fine, so we must be fine. I'm looking at the instruments, those look fine. I'm okay. Super nauseous. I couldn't figure out where we were at until my feet were on the ground again. Like that, it's a real thing. It does happen. Even on calm nights above water, you could look down below you and be like, oh, that's the sky. Many air helicopters have flipped over and have nosed straight into the water because they thought that was the sky because of just the pure glass-like reflection on the water. So it's very scary. Disorientation happens. especially during bad weather or even super nice weather. Helicopter shopping, like I said, is highly discouraged. We won't allow it. Our pilots are really good at saying, hey, was this turned down, or has anybody else been contacted about this flight? Did they say yes or no? If not, if they say no, we're not going to go. It's that kind of simple. Like I said, local area, approximately 30 miles vicinity. Winds, we don't really fly anything over 30 to 40 knots sustained. If it's gusting, it's not that bad. It's just going to be a really crappy flight, really bumpy flight, but not horrible. But if the wind is like 40 miles sustained, or even gusting 40 plus knots, we're not going to go, because there's enough wind that they could make those blades bend down when we're idling on the ground, or it could flip the helicopter over if we're idling on the ground. We just won't do it. During the winter months, our biggest concern is wind chill factor. -20 wind chill is kind of what we're shooting for, but we really won't go anything greater than -10 wind chill. So if it's -10 outside, imagine the additional wind chill of the wind coming off the blades. So, do you really want to be loading a patient underneath those blades with that much wind coming down off of them with a chance of exposing them to extreme cold? No. So it's a safety thing that we don't want to expose patients. It's not necessarily for us, it's for the patients. So decline in flight, before I talked about 4 to go, 1 to say no, this is what we're talking about. The pilot, flight crew, okay? Everyone has a 51% pool. That holds true no matter what it is. You can say no for any reason. Now, if you're the kind of person that's like, I really don't want to go because I didn't sleep well last night and I just don't feel like going. That's not how this works. It is, you've got a gut feeling, something doesn't feel right. You kind of have to justify it. You can't just use it as you're lazy and you don't want to go. That doesn't fly. No pun intended. So, whenever you guys are in and around our aircraft, this is kind of what you need to do. You need to listen to the flight crew. We're going to be telling you what you can and can't do. Don't approach unless one of us says, come on, waves you towards us. If you don't see it from us, you need to make eye contact with our pilot. They need to see you before they'll allow you to approach. Always approach and depart from 12 and 2 o'clock position. So if you're looking at the top of the aircraft, looking straight down on it, the nose is always 12, the tail is always 6. So off the nose and 2 o'clock. That window right there, anywhere within that, that is the pilot's seat looking forward and to his right. So that is your 12 to 2 o'clock position. So as long as you approach and depart from that angle, not a big deal. They can see you. Load in the patient. We always like to have as much help as we can, especially carrying these people. Minimum of 4, at least 6. Sometimes if they're hefty, 8. It's going to be a little tight confinement, but we need to help. Let us do all the mechanics on the actual stretcher itself. There's a couple handles and things that we have to squeeze, move, and manipulate. Let us do that. Don't worry about it. We just need you to help us get them in, slide them in, and latched in. Don't run. If something gets blown away, whether it's a blanket, a hat, I don't care what it is, let it go. It'll still be there when we take off. It's not going to be gone forever. It's not going to get destroyed by the aircraft. If it gets blown away, just let it go, okay? Make sure if you have any clothing or loose articles, it's secure. Not necessarily worry about your badge. I wear mine on the outside of my flight suit. It's never been an issue. If you wear bandana or something around your head, or if you're wearing a hat, take it off. Put it back in the air, put it back in your vehicle, put it back in your ambulance. Do not wear it in the aircraft. Just a little gust can blow that thing off your head. And then nothing above your head. If I was standing here right now, if I put my hand straight up in the air, I couldn't touch the blades if I wanted to. That's how much distance there is when the blades aren't spinning. Now, if the blades are spinning and there is wind can make those blades dip down and flex. They can flex down to below my head level on windy days. So that's why we tell you don't put anything above your head. If you have an IV pole or a bag of fluid, don't hold it up above your head like that. Either lay it on the patient, which we usually do that anyway for you guys, you don't have to worry about it, or hold it at about shoulder level or chest level if we need you to. Okay, so nothing above your head, especially if the blades are spinning. So there's your 10 and 12, or 12 and 2 o'clock, looking at the top. So noon, 12 o'clock. Never walk behind the aircraft, especially from the skids back if you threw a line, because we can't see, we don't have rear view mirrors like a car, so we can't see behind us. And definitely never, ever, 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 ever go past the rear stabilizers. That's those fins back there, okay? If the aircraft is spinning, and the blades are spinning, that means there's a lot of air coming out of that pipe. If you walk behind that rear stabilizer, your feet are gonna get kicked out from underneath you from that wind. So We don't want to see that happen. That's just a blanket statement on any aircraft that you guys may work with. We're not always in the MD. We are not always in an aircraft with a NOTAR system. Right now, our Bolivar aircraft is a backup aircraft. It's a BK-117, has an open tail rotor on it. It is low enough that if I walk underneath it, I'm not gonna have a head anymore. Like, that's how much lower it is. So that's why we tell you, doesn't matter the aircraft, if there's a rear stabilizer, don't go past it. No ifs, ands, or buts, okay? So for safety, if we have an emergency and we need your help, this is what you guys need to be aware of, especially if you need to pull us out of that aircraft. So first off, we have an oxygen system on there. It's compressed O's, just like what you guys have on the truck. The only difference is if we're in our backup aircraft, it is liquid oxygen, okay? Not just an oxygen bottle, but it is liquid oxygen in a very highly compressed tank, okay? Very dangerous. Other deals you have to worry about is jet fuel. We use Jet A in all of our aircrafts, highly flammable. So if that tank breaks, it ignites, it's explosive. Lubricants, obviously 2 big engines above our head. There's gonna be all the motor fluids, all the lubricants and oils and stuff in there. That stuff can be flammable and incredibly hot. Those engines run on anywhere between 600 to 800 degrees, just operating temperature. That is 2 to 3 times more than what your car temperature is. So keep that in mind if you have to get near them. Also needles, just like the back of your truck, we've got our full assortment of all of our medical supplies, needles, scalpels, drugs, tubes, all of our expendables and perishables are back there too. Okay, if a mishap occurs, this is where we're gonna need the help, especially if it's with us. If our pilot's incapacitated, if the flight crew is incapacitated, this is what's important for you guys to help us get out, okay? First thing is safety first. If the rotors are still spinning, don't approach, okay? It's not worth it to get you guys injured too if you get hit or taken out by a rotor blade, okay? It'll slow down eventually. If not, we can stop them from the inside, okay? Let the rotor stop. Full shut off. If our pilot cannot shut off from the aircraft, he's incapacitated, or the engines are screwing up and on a runaway, which does happen, we can shut them off. These big red switches right here are emergency fuel cutoff switches. If you or I or the pilot can hit those, you flip up those red switches to the back, cuts off the fuel completely, engine shut off in about 2 to 3 minutes because they just choke out, okay? There's all fire extinguishers in there. There's one up front, one in the back that we can get to. And then we're going to talk about trying to get us out. How do you open the doors? How do you open the windows? So there's, like I said, the emergency shut off. 2 big old red switches, flip them up, flip them back, kills the switch, kills the fuel completely, okay? In AirCare 1, this is what those pictures are. AirCare 2 is just a little different. There's always an extinguisher in between the front seats behind the console, and AirCare 2 is just behind the pilot's seat. In both AirCare 1 and 2, it's on the back of that equipment shelf, that equipment wall. So like our monitor and vent and everything is mounted up there, and the extinguisher is mounted on the back side of it. If we can't reach to it. Whoops, wrong button. Bam, got it. Battery shut off. If you can't get to the fuel and engines are still running, the battery will not shut the engines off. Let me re-emphasize that. The battery will not shut the engines off. Once the engines are running, they are self-maintaining with their own generators, okay? We have the battery in order to kick them on. It's just like the battery in your car. It allows us to spark the engines and get them flying and get them rotating, but once they're up and going and they're at idle or faster, they are self-maintaining electrically. So you have to shut the engines off to completely eliminate electricity. But if we need to shut the power off, there's something else going on, engines are off, it's an electrical fire. On the nose, on both aircraft, there's 2 little pins. You pull the pins up, open up that little gray little deal right there. It's a quarter turn and you pull it out. And that's it. Quick and easy, simple, and you don't have to worry about it. It shuts off electricity and power to the entire aircraft except the engines if they're running. So keep that in mind. I don't even think this video works. We'll see if it does. Where's my mouse at? No, it does not. I'll just explain it to you. This is at a helicopter base. I can't remember where it's at, but this is at their base. This is their helipad. This is their hangar where they can park their aircraft. And this was they were about to take off or they were landing. I can't remember exactly which direction they were going. But at their own base, they flipped, got top heavy somehow, turned over, blades hit the ground, dragged them down, flipped it over. The pilot was out there in the aircraft by himself. He was killed, and I believe one of the med crew was over here. Once they saw it flipping, they ran. So things like that can happen even with our own people. So that's something else to keep in mind. So thank you guys for listening to this full spiel. Right now, I want to tell you there's a huge debate out there about when to fly versus time, okay? Now, we want you guys to know that if you guys request us, it's because you need us. And if there's a situation where there are time-critical diagnoses, so stroke, heart attack, class 1 traumas, things like that, if you feel as if though you need the extra help, call us. If you feel like you can get to the hospital faster, drive. What we want to do is what's right for the patient. Is flying them all the time necessarily right? No. Is taking them by ground all the time necessarily right? No. What we want to do is provide the highest level of care and get the right things done in the right amount of time for the right patient. So if you guys call us, you need the extra help, whatever, we'll back you guys up. If you're out in the middle of nowhere and you need help, we've got no problem showing up, okay? You can call us, put us on standby if you feel like you're not sure until you get to see the patient, okay? We're not fans of standby, but that's totally okay. That lets us know, hey, there's an aircraft necessary or needed somewhere. Now, does a standby save us? No, it does not reserve the aircraft for your call. If we get a request somewhere else, we're gonna go there. Standby is just letting us know, hey, there might be a flight. So keep that in mind. But please, if you feel it's necessary, don't hesitate to call us. We will definitely come out. We will definitely help. The patient doesn't have to be flown. We can go in by ground with you. If you don't feel like they're necessarily flight criteria, but you need help, we'll go in with you on the truck. Not a big deal. We do that all the time. If they're too big, but you still need help, and you know they can't be flown, but you need that additional critical care stuff, call us. We'll jump in the truck with you. We'll drive in with you. Not a big deal. We like to do that. We like to help you guys. We like flights. We like patient calls. That's our job. That's why we're there. We're there to help you guys. We're an additional resource for you guys to make your jobs easier and to make your experience and patient outcomes more successful. Sound good? Cool. Well, like I said, thank you guys for taking your time. Is there any questions that you guys have, comments, concerns that you want to ask? Something that came up throughout the slideshow? Nothing? Well, just so you guys know, you guys are welcome to come and fly with us. As a Cox employees, you guys can do fly-alongs. Not a big deal. All you need to do is contact these two individuals, either Shelly Elsley, she's one of our flight nurses, or our outreach lady. She is kind of the head honcho when it comes to outreach, talking to fire departments, coming out here to these classes. She's our gal. Susan Crum, she's our program director. She's pretty much been here since AirCare has been around, so she knows the ins and outs of the flight industry, and she's the one that will approve or disapprove if you guys want to come fly along with us. So